Hello, my vibrant friend. Welcome to the podcast today. I'm thrilled to have a terrific guest today. Her name is Dr. Ellen Albertson. She is both a psychologist and a registered dietitian, as well as a health and wellness coach, Reiki master, mindful self-compassion teacher, and she's been working with midlife women throughout her career, really. And we're talking about some fun things today. Has anyone out there heard of nutritional psychology? I almost feel like, Dr. Allen, you're the person that, with your background, you would be the one to do this, as well as some other things. But welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. It's thrilled to be here.
Well, I'd like you to tell the audience a little bit more about your story.
Sure. Well, I grew up with my mom was so interested in nutrition. And when I was like 8 years old, she had read a diet for Small Planet. And all of a sudden, like the hot dogs, the potato chips, like disappeared. And the next day we were almost literally eating tofu. But she was like, her mother was like a pioneer in nutrition, and she was. So I grew up where nutrition was really, really important. And, I went to college, floundered a little bit, decided to go back to school and become a registered dietitian because I really was so fascinated by nutrition. I also love working with people, helping people. And the interesting thing is when I started my career in clinical nutrition, I was an outpatient dietitian. Everybody coming to me was a middle-aged woman, women at midlife, women in their 40s plus. This is way before anyone was talking about menopause or any of these things. But, what I found that not only was I fascinated by this period of life, but this is a time of life where a lot is changing. Physiologically, the hormonal changes, the more we're learning about hormones and estrogen, realizing that there are estrogen receptors everywhere. It is affecting brain, it is affecting bone, it's affecting heart, your immune system, all kinds of things. And so people were coming to me with, weight gain, and they didn't have energy, and maybe the cholesterol, blood sugar was up, blood pressure was up. So I've always been fascinated by this time of life. So I spent a little bit of time doing things in the media. And then I became a personal fitness trainer. And again, all of my clients were midlife women. I was at the time and not doing everything right. I have to say, I was addicted to exercise. I was like an alcoholic working in a liquor store. I was working out 4 to 6 hours a day, terrible negative body image, eating disorders, really not taking great care of myself. I mean, I looked great. Like, I'd be that woman out on the Group X floor, leading Group X with all this confidence and muscle mass, but really wasn't feeling very, very good. And I was actually at that time, I was struggling with some mental health struggles. I was diagnosed with major depression, clinical depression, and I went on antidepressants for that. Then later I was having gut issues as I was getting my PhD in psychology. I decided I really wanted to get a PhD, didn't want to do it in nutrition, decided to go back to school and, bit of an overachiever, get the PhD in psychology. But with a lot of stress. I think like probably a lot of your listeners, professional woman, getting a PhD, and I had, teens and tweens, 2 kids, marriage was a little rocky, a lot going on, and my gut just stopped working. It was like, my gut just hurt all the time, and I didn't know what was going on. I went to conventional doctors, gastroenterologists, and they were like, oh, it looks fine, it looks fine. So finally, I went to a naturopath, and he diagnosed me with Hashimoto's disease, which is the most common autoimmune disease for women. I think it's the most common autoimmune disease of the thyroid. Basically, your body attacks your thyroid gland. And so I realized that was an issue with me. And then I changed my diet and really started going gluten-free with that. Again, to work with women, I eventually became the Midlife Whisperer. That moniker came to me one day and realized I love working with midlife women and really work with midlife women to get out unstuck and find the energy, confidence, and clarity to make their next chapter their best chapter. So really working with body, mind, heart, spirit relations, a little bit of career as women are sort of making changes. Did so many of the things. I think the struggles we have, went through menopause, got a divorce. I went blind 3 times, went for empty nest. So I've been through a lot. And here I am, in my early 60s, enjoying life to the fullest, enjoying my career. I love inspiring midlife women. As you mentioned, I'm starting to really dive into this whole nutritional psychology as a dietitian and a psychologist. It made sense to sort of delve into this area. I certainly knew intuitively that when we eat right, we feel better mentally. And we know the body and the mind are interrelated. So now I'm actually formally studying this. There's the place called the Center for Nutritional Psychology. So I'm actually doing a certification in learning all about the microbiome and about the gut-brain interaction. It's really a bi-directional relationship where how you feel emotionally and mentally, psychologically impacts how you eat and your eating behavior, and what you eat impacts how you feel mentally and emotionally. So it's kind of a really fascinating new area that I'm super motivated to have. Just another reason to just inspire people to eat right, because we know eating right diet is at the cornerstone of being healthy, feeling good.
Right. And I love how you talk about that this is a great time in life for you. You're in your early 60s and you feel good and you're excited about what you're doing. And I think that for our listeners who are a little bit, in the weeds of the body is changing and trying to figure out what's working, and like even the lotion you put on your face, it doesn't work anymore, that this is, you're in a pivot, you're in a shift change, but this is a beautiful time, and expect to be happy as you work on all the puzzle pieces.
Yeah. And the other thing to say too is that when you're not happy, that's okay too. I think we can get into the space where it's kind of toxic positivity, where it's like happy all the time, particularly, you're looking at social media and everyone seems to be living happy lives except for you. And so that's where the self-compassion piece, I didn't actually mention that piece too, is for my dissertation, I was really fortunate enough to work with Kristen Neff, who is the founder or the pioneer in this whole area of self-compassion. And my dissertation was on self-compassion and body image in women, because I had negative body image myself. And I know negative body image does not go away at midlife. We study it a lot in college kids and, adolescents. Yeah. But in fact, it can get worse. Most women at midlife, have an issue with how their bodies look. And that's really because our bodies are changing with menopause, with the estrogen decline. You can be putting on weight, particularly around the midline. You're getting gray hair's fine, but, we're seeing gray hair, the wrinkles. And, we don't resemble the thin ideal. And so with self-compassion, what my research showed is that practicing self-compassion, which is really treating yourself the way you would a good friend, where you're kind rather than judgmental. When you mess up, you realize common humanity, it's normal. Give yourself what you need. What that did, practicing self-compassion, improved body image. So body shame went down, body dissatisfaction went down, self-worth based on appearance went down, and body appreciation went up. So I love that idea where we can learn to really love and appreciate our bodies without changing our bodies, like just by being nicer to ourselves.
Give us some practical tips. Give us some practical tips on that for the audience.
Yeah. In terms of self-compassion, so there are formal practices where you can listen to self-compassion meditations, which is what I did for my dissertation, for my research. But the other piece that I often have women do is, first of all, take a moment and think about, you've had a good friend and something has happened to her. Maybe, she's had a fender bender, an issue at work. She's feeling embarrassed, upset about something. What do? Right? You probably go over and you make her dinner, give her a hug, say, hey, you want to go out for a glass of wine, a walk. Now take a moment and think about, oh my gosh, you have had something that's made you feel short of your expectations. Maybe you've had a fight with a loved one, you've had a health crisis. How do you treat yourself?
Right.
And when I do this in workshops, I would say, 99% of the time, I say, when I ask people, and if you're listening, ask you, were you nicer to your friend or to yourself? And everybody is nicer to their friends in the first piece. And think about when you're going through something, what would I do and how would I treat my friend who is going through this? And then do that for yourself. And the other tip, which is really great, is to make a list. So take out a piece of paper and make 5 columns: body, mind, heart, spirit, and relationships. And in each of those columns, think about how you already take care of yourself or how you'd like to take care of yourself. So for example, with body, maybe it's like I take a nap or I go for a walk or I get a massage. With your mind, maybe it's, I listen to a podcast, read a book. Emotionally, maybe I use essential oils or again, take a hot shower, a long bath, talk to a loved one, get a hug, play with my pet. What do you do in terms of spirituality? Maybe I meditate, I spend time in nature. relationships. I spend time with people who really get me and make me feel good. So you have this piece of paper. The third element of self-compassion is mindfulness. When you notice you are stressed and suffering, rather than just plowing on forward, maybe, you grab the cookie, a chocolate, and another cup of caffeine, you plow forward, you're like, oh, what do I need right now? And you give yourself what you need, because I think as women, we're taught, put everybody else first.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, what do we have for ourselves? And it's usually food that we go to, because that's kind of like the acceptable thing when you've had a tough day, you haven't given yourself what you need, then it's like that threesome with Ben and Jerry's, or it's the wine and cheddar party, instead of really taking care of yourself. And, the self-compassion piece is really important, for the work that you're doing with women with weight loss, because I know early in my career when I was a trainer, it was all about, I hate my body, so I will starve myself and beat myself up. And transport. The stress goes up, cortisol levels go up, you're not eating enough and you're dieting, which is also going to drive that cortisol up. That drives fat deposition around the midline, drives up the appetite, drives down the positive mental health. And so, but when we come at this from this attitude of, just start with being nice to me, and I'm going to do this journey, this lifestyle change that I want to do because I love and care about myself, and I care about my future self. I was talking to a client today, and she was like, it was right before her birthday, and she was like, you know what? I'm going to do this for my 85-year-old self.
Nice.
So that when I look back, in my 50s, my 85-year-old self will be like, thank you, because I want to be mobile, at 85. I want to be able to walk and be independent. And so that starts now, particularly at midlife, because things start to shift as the hormones change. We start to lose bone and we start to lose muscle mass, and our brains can be impacted as well. Our heart, women don't get heart disease before the menopausal shift.
Right.
It's really important time for us to really start to do this from this place of self-love, because we care about ourselves now and our future self, not because we loathe our body and some, media image tells us that we're not okay.
Yeah. And I want to just really highlight what you said, the part where you said, so all the bad things that happen when you aren't good to yourself, and you get none of your goals by being mean to yourself. Like I just want to really let us sit on that, because we think, well, no, I will. No, because I'll eat better. No, because I'll work out. Then I'll exercise more. You get zero of the goals. Your relationships do not get better. Your job does not get better. Your career advancement, health goals, none of them happen if you're mean to yourself at midlife, right? Because your hormones will not tolerate it.
Yeah, it's really true. The research really shows that having a fierce self-critic is demotivational, because again, the cortisol is going up. The cortisol is going to shut you down and exhaust you. We think about like when somebody else criticizes you, how do you feel? And we're so apt to criticize ourselves, but we think that we need the inner critic to motivate us, but we do not. That is a myth. That inner critic is really the internalized voice of early caregivers who tell us, do this, do that. I think a lot of my clients, I know about you, are perfectionists, right? So it's like, I got to do it perfect. And, and when we're talking about the lifestyle change, there's no such thing as perfect. Like I'll say to a client, just put your sneakers on and get outside and see how far you get. It's about that starting piece. And when we're leaning into the self-criticism and the perfectionism, it just shuts us right down. And the health journey really becomes a chore instead of a joy.
Yeah. And I know that some of you listening are thinking, well, that got me through grad school, that inner critic, or that got me to do all the things to get into the top college that I wanted. But we could argue with you if there could have been a more inspirational way, but now it's just really not going to work.
Yeah. So I'll have people, thank your critics, say, thank you very much. But then we start building this voice of self-compassion that said, I want you to change. I want you to be healthier. I want you to be happier, more fulfilled, have more purpose in life, have better relationships, because I love and care about you, not because I'm, comparing to some future perfect self. And I love this concept of, there's a book called The Gap in the Gain. Look at where you've come.
Yeah.
Compare yourself to your previous self versus your future self and where you think you want to be. Because I say one of the things that I love about this work, and I've realized in my own life, is that The universe knows better than you do what's best for you. I bought a home in Costa Rica last year, and I never in a million years thought like I would move to a foreign country and love it.
Oh.
But that was the right thing for me. It's like we can't always tell, or or my fiance was not the kind of person that I would have seen myself with. But again, the universe was like, yep, this is the right person for you. And I think that's makes life a lot more interesting when we get out of our own way. We let the self-critic, take a little bit of a back seat, and we're open to what is truly in our best interest. And that's what really happens when you practice the self-compassion. One of the nice side effects is you start to love yourself. Not only do you, depression goes down, stress goes down, anxiety goes down, optimism, well-being go up, but you start to love yourself the way you love your friends, and you stop doing those things that insult your soul, and you start doing those things which are truly in your highest interest.
I love that. And you didn't say that if you love yourself and are nice to yourself, that you're going to let everything slide. You're going to get bad at your job. You're going to, become lazy. I mean, that's not any of the things. And that's the things people worry about, right? Like if I'm nice to myself, then I'll lose control.
Yeah, that's a misconception. Self-compassion doesn't mean, you stop doing those things. I mean, imagine you're a compassionate mom, right? And your kid says, I don't want to go to school today. You don't tell the kid, no problem, Johnny. Why don't you, sit in front of the TV and I will bring you junk food and you sit and you watch TV. You say, you have to go to school. This is what you do. And I'm packing you a healthy lunch. Self-compassion isn't this weak thing. I mean, think about compassionate people like the Dalai Lama, who are really our Nelson Mandela, these people who are compassionate, but they're tough. Self-compassion is not a wimpy thing. Being, self-compassionate can be, challenging to be there for yourself and doing what it is you truly need. It's not at all the same thing as self-indulgence and self-compassion are not the same things at all.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Would you talk a little bit more about, we touched really quickly on it, a little bit more about the gut-brain connection and nutritional psychology and how that plays into eating healthy?
Sure. Well, we'll start by saying you have this thing called your microbiome. And your microbiome is the trillions of cells, literally more DNA, more cells in your gut. Most of them are in your digestive tract, although there's some on your skin as well and in other places. But these organisms and the environment around them play incredible roles in your body. We have this symbiotic relationship. And I'll start off by saying the standard American diet, highly processed, highly palatable food, is not good for your gut. There's a ton of research to really show that, we have positive microorganisms, neutral and negative. And when you eat the standard American diet, lots of sugar, lots of refined carbohydrates, lots of chemicals, processed foods, you go into something called dysbiosis, which means that you have a lot more negative, bad for you organisms, mostly bacteria, compared to the positive ones. So the first thing is the diet that is best is really a whole foods, plant-based diet, because what you've got with the plant-based foods is these prebiotics, this fiber, which feeds the organisms. And then, of course, you can have what's called probiotics, which are fermented foods, things like kimchi, yogurt, kombucha, sauerkraut, that actually replenish your gut. So it's super healthy. Now, what's so interesting is these microorganisms do all kinds of things. First of all, your gut bacteria creates neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are messengers that transmit nerve signals and influence how you feel. So dopamine, serotonin, and GABA are the big ones that are actually produced by the bacteria. The bacteria also impact inflammation. They regulate inflammation in the body and the immune system. And so when we hear a lot about, a lot of inflammation, kind of inflammation is at the root of so many diseases, joint pains, and even, your brain can get inflamed. The healthy bacteria really help to keep the inflammation under bay. They also help with your immune system. And then also your stress response is also integrated with what's going on in your gut. So there's this gut-brain axis. You might know, like sometimes we think about things like butterflies in your stomach. When you're nervous, you feel it in your gut. We think about you're listening to your gut. So we know intuitively that our gut and our brain are connected, but there is your vagus nerve, which connects it. There's something called the enteric immune system, which which connects your brain and your gut. So it's all interplayed. Plus, when you're eating healthy too, and your gut is healthy, you've got much better nutrient absorption. So your brain, your body, your cells are getting everything it needs. And so your brain and your body are just going to feel better. And then, on the far end, we also have a lot of digestive disorders, things like irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's disease. And we know people who have those really difficult conditions also have a lot more anxiety and stress, partially because of the condition, but partially because of what's going on in their systems. And so by taking really good care of our guts, which is mainly through eating and also stress. So when we're stressed out, we don't digest our food as well. I mean, when we are in kind of fight and flight, our digestive tract actually shuts down and, it starts up again. But if your body's in fight or flight, if you're being, it thinks it's being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you don't need your gut to be working. You need your muscles to be working so you can run away. So when we're stressed out, our guts actually shut down, and we don't function optimally. So that's just a little bit in a nutshell. But it is a really fascinating field that I am just starting to really dig into. So it's another motivation for me, right, to feel better psychologically.
Yeah, and even people that have, Dr. Ellen and I are never going to tell you that if you have clinical depression that, if only you ate better, or only you exercise more, whatever, that would, fix it, because we don't know that about you. But we do know that when you have those issues or you have anxiety and you don't eat well, you do feel worse. And that you can optimize kind of how you're feeling by eating well and nourishing yourself, right?
Yeah, and I think also that it's something positive that you can do. And we should also, emphasize the importance of water. We get anxious when we're dehydrated. So, there's just so much that you can be doing. And I love that you said that. I mean, if you are struggling with depression, it's good to see a specialist. It's also good to consider, where are you at in the menopause spectrum? So women at midlife have the highest rate of depression for any group based on age and gender. It's about 13%. So I think that's like 1 in 8. It's very, very high. So we don't know if it's the hormonal shifts that are causing what exactly the relationship is, but it is really good to have that conversation and see, do I need to treat the hormones? Is that the issue that is really going to help me feel better? It's often because, we're not getting sleep. We haven't touched on sleep at all, but these bacteria, all of these organisms too, they have circadian rhythms. And so it's very important that we get sleep. That's when our appetite mechanisms reset as well. So if you're not getting sleep, if you've got hot flashes, there are estrogen receptors everywhere. It could be the hormone changes. So to really work with a physician who really will listen to you and will look at with a wide lens and see, what's going on nutritionally, what's going on with my environment, am I under a lot of stress, what's going on with my diet, what's going on with hormones. Unfortunately, we can't test that sort of perimenopause, that period before you reach menopause when your periods have actually stopped for a year. But most physicians who are educated in this area, from talking with you, will be able to figure out what is going on. And I guess that we're both here to say that you can get the help that you need, whether it's with weight loss, whether it's, with your mental health, whatever it is. It's so important to work with a skilled professional.
Awesome. Well, you also have a book. You want to tell us a little bit about that? Rock Your Midlife. And I'm excited about it. It sounds like it's got all the wonderful things for what's going on with midlife and what you work with. Midlife. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, 7 steps. So we've touched on some of them. The first is to know yourself. And that's so important, because if you want to rock your midlife, you've got to be on a path that suits you. I kind of use the metaphor. It's kind of like, and this was my story, it's like climbing up this ladder of success. And I don't know if you can relate to this, Dr. Heather, but climbing up the ladder of success, you're doing all the things that people told you you're supposed to do, or you're pleasing other people, and you get to the top of the building and you look around and you're like, I don't like it up here. I'm not happy. I did everything to please everybody else and do all the things that society said. And then think you get to midlife and you think, gosh, the life that I created for myself isn't exactly working. And I need to make some shifts. That really starts with knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing your passions, knowing what brings you joy, knowing your core values. That's the first step, to really know yourself. The second step we touched on is loving yourself, that self-compassion piece. It really, to me, I think if I wrote the book again, I would make that number 1, because that's what changed everything for me. I was that really workaholic, high functioning, high overachieving with kind of perfectly hidden depression where everything was fine, but it really wasn't. And the self-compassion piece was this big shift, like, oh, I can treat myself differently. So that's number 2. Number 3 is energize yourself. So we've talked a bit about that, about, the importance of diet. It doesn't have to be crazy. It's whole food, plant-based diet. Eat a lot of plants. Don't eat anything your grandmother wouldn't have eaten, and eat until you are satisfied rather than stuffed. Diet doesn't have to be crazy. I think we're, sometimes taught to look for these magic bullets. Focus on changing your lifestyle, not on, the 30 pounds in 30 days stuff. The 4th piece is reprogramming your brain. And so we touched a little bit on that about neuroscience, where our brain's constantly reworking itself, remodeling. The brain is actually plastic. So by changing our thoughts, we change the structure of our brain. As we change the structure of our brain, it changes our mental health, how we feel, how we think, changing our belief systems. And again, bringing the diet into that piece of, if I'm eating this whole food plant-based diet and getting my prebiotics and my probiotics, that's going to feed that brain health and keep things working really well. Then we get to 5, which is empower yourself. So after we have learned to love ourselves and we know ourselves well, we know it makes us happy, we have the energy to go out and rock our midlife, our brains, and our belief systems. We've kind of looked at that and we're changing that. Then it's time to go do that thing, right? A lot of women in midlife, we are comfortably uncomfortable. We're staying maybe in bodies because it's comfortable. I know this is what I do in the evening. I hear this. I don't know if you heard this a lot from women, but like, gosh, if I change my diet, what's going to happen to my relationship with my husband and my kids? If Tuesday night's not pizza night anymore, or if I don't go out with my girlfriends for those couple glasses of wine, go to the Cheesecake Factory, and how am I going to navigate that? Or gosh, if I was to lose some weight and feel great and look, feel good about where I'm at with my body, maybe I'd have to do those things I'm scared of doing. So this is kind of like empowering myself, or maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's like, well, this marriage, this relationship's not working, or I'm single and I want to meet somebody. So this is where, kind of look at like, what's on my bucket list? What are those things I really want to do? And now that I have this, I like to think of self-compassion as a parachute and a life vest. So if something happens, you got this life vest to hold you. If you take something risky, do something and you fail, you've got a parachute, because I'm here to say you're going to fail. If you go out and try to rock your midlife and try to do some new things, it's a lot of trial and error. And you got to reframe failure as just stepping stones moving forward, rocking your midlife for success. And then we get to 6, which is a toughie. It's rehab your relationships, because what happens is you start to feel good. You start to be that butterfly. You're doing more of what lights you up. You're feeling better physically, but the people in your life still think you're the caterpillar. You're like, no, I'm a butterfly. And they're like, no, you're a caterpillar, because we see things as we are, not as they truly are. People are seeing you the way that you were when you're changing. They might pull you back. So this chapter is really about, the step is about learning something called nonviolent communication, learning to say no, creating a personal bill of rights of what you stand for. I think a lot of us are recovering people pleasers. I know I'm one of them. I always had the sense that, gosh, I'll make everybody else happy and then I'll be happy. And
it's a giving, unselfish way to be, right?
And it's no wonder at the end of the day that we just want to have a glass of wine and, and free Ben and Jerry's. So this is rehabbing those relationships. And unfortunately, you might lose some relationships. I lost a lot of relationships as I went through this transformation in my 50s, but now I have so many beautiful, rich relationships with people who really get me, that I love, who support me, that are so much fun, that are really in alignment with who I am now. And then the last,
I've also had before you go on, I also had a client who really rehabbed all her relationships and kept them all. The adult children who came home and, had been hunting and left this big, making this big mess in the kitchen. And she just said, I don't clean up after you anymore, and I will come back when you have cleaned this all up. And her son looked shocked, but he cleaned it up and it was fine. And he was still happy and loved her and was willing to pivot, right? And she also, with her husband, was, she just said, some of these things that we're doing aren't working for me anymore, and I would like it to be like this. And so they were able to negotiate, how they were going to go to the cabin with the in-laws and how they were going to do some things with their adult children, and just being able to, look at some of the things that you don't have to keep things just the same with these people. Some of them are happy to move along with you, but you're going to have to speak up.
Yeah, I love that, because that's boundaries, right? Of just saying a boundary, of saying that's where the nonviolent communication piece comes in, where you say that when you hunt and you leave the carcass in the middle of the kitchen, they feel angry. And so I'm asking you to clean up after yourself. And when you do go, hunting and fishing, to take care of your stuff. And you're right. That's a beautiful story. I'm so glad that you shared that. So we can rehab those relationships, certainly with our families. We don't want to, lose those relationships. And then that last piece is enlightening yourself. So this is really about finding your passion, your purpose, reconnecting or finding new spiritual practices, and I guess making this shift and realizing that everything is happening for your highest good. And I think that's, to anyone who's listening to this, and that is really one of my biggest pieces of advice, is realizing even all the things I've been through, everything you've been through has brought you to this moment, whatever you are going through. And then also realizing that, not just that you're a human with a soul, but you're a soul having a human experience, and to really step back a little bit and realize just some of the things that we worry about, like asking yourself, is this thing I'm worrying about, is it going to matter in a week or a year? Or what's truly important to you and what makes you feel good? I think that's the basis of so much, whether it's eating right, whether it's relationships, whether it's your career. Midlife is the time where you give yourself permission to do more of what makes you happy.
Oh, that's beautiful. Let's stop there. I highly recommend the book. We'll make sure that we have this linked in the show notes, as well as, all the places that you can find Dr. Ellen online. And Dr. Ellen also has a podcast and programs. And would you like to talk a little bit about those? We'll make sure they're in the...
Sure. Well, if anybody thank you. If anybody wants to find me, it's just whisperer.com. That's the midlifewhisperer.com. I'm the only midlife whisperer out there. You can get my book there. Yeah, I do the one-on-one coaching that you do. So if you're interested and you feel like it's resonating what I'm saying, my book's available. I do a lot of dancing around on Instagram. You can see me in Vermont and Costa Rica growing my own food, having a great time. And I'm just really here to just inspire you and give you information so that you can make your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond amazing. Because I think that we're told, and I look this up sometimes, when you Google midlife, either it's conjoined with crisis or it's the wrong side of 40. And I'm like, that is just crazy. So wherever you are at in your life, there are people out there to support you. And I'm here to support you and inspire you to go out and rock your midlife.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today.